Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Here are your Algebra 7.2 notes. I'm Mr. Miller. We're going to be looking at multiplying polynomials. So that's what we're going to look at. So here we're going to look at multiplying whether they're binomials, multiplied with other binomials, or multiplying binomials with trinomials using the appropriate methods. So what we're going to show you today is basically 4 different methods on how to multiply these out. So start off simple, like it all goes back to distributive property. This is actually one of the methods. So again, what is our distributive property? Anytime you have a minus 2 with parentheses in there with a minus or a plus sign separating the two terms, you distribute that minus 2 through. So we go minus 2 times 9 is going to be a minus 18a. And then be careful with your signs. We have a minus times a minus, so that's going to be positive, and that's going to be a positive 2b. Also, cleaning up your work. Here in our second example here, we have our powers. So again, we have some invisible powers that we can't see. That's an s to the 1, that's an r to the 1. And then remember, power to power, when we're multiplying, it's not power to a power, excuse me, when we're multiplying different terms here with the powers, we add them together. So r to the second plus r to the first, we add the powers together, so that becomes r to the third. And then s to the first and s to the third. So when we're multiplying those together, we add our powers together, so we get s to the fourth. All right, so multiplying a monomial and a polynomial together. Remember, monomial means one term. So this is the monomial, the x. This is also a monomial. Even though we have multiplications, there's nothing separating it with adding or subtracting. It's all together through multiplication. It's also a monomial. This one is being multiplied by a binomial, and this one is being multiplied by 4 terms. So we'll just call it polynomial. We don't need to get into technical terms there. So same concept, distribute. So we distribute that to both parts. So we have 7 times x to the second. And again, this is why we practice this warm-up right now, is because this is going to become 7. And there's an invisible 1 there. So we add our exponents together, so that is 7x to the third. And then keep the sign because they're all positive. And x times 4 gives us a 4x. And then we repeat over here on this side. We'll do one more together. So we actually have 4 things to go to. So take your time, don't rush through these. So we have 3 times 2, that has to happen first, so we get a 6. X to the second times x to the third, so we will add those exponents together, and that becomes x to the fifth. Watching the signs, so again, this is a positive term, so all the signs will hold true. So that's one less thing you got to think about. So unlike this one up here in our checkpoint, you had to think about that minus because it changed things. Here, our signs are all going to be the same, so that's nice. We have an invisible 1 in here, so it's 3 times 1, so that's just going to be 3. And then x to the second times x to the second is x to the fourth. Plus sign. 3 has to be multiplied by 4, so that's 12. Again, we have an invisible 1 on that x, so it is x to the second times x to the first, which is x to the third. And finally, minus sign, and 3 times 3 is 9, and then we have an x squared that we bring along with it. And there we go. So this is actually the distributive method that we are using here. We're going to see that here again in a moment. What we're going to do is I'm going to do this first one with all 4 methods, and then I'm going to let you work on the second one using all 4 methods. And we're going to let you figure out what method works best for you. and sometimes we have to change up our methods. A lot of students like to use the table/box method. I'm a big component of using FOIL. That's how I learned, so I use FOIL a ton. I use the distributive property also, which is also referred to as a horizontal way to do it, to multiply your polynomials together. And then we have the vertical method. I'd say this is probably my least favorite. But again, personal preference. You definitely need to be able to do at least the first three. And even of the first two here, basically these middle two are going to play distributive, and one of these two is what you actually need to know how to do those. So let's get into the table method, and then we'll go from there. So the table method is exactly like it sounds. You're going to break this up into a table. I don't care which set of terms. So we have our binomial here. We either put that on top or on the side, doesn't matter. The other binomial has to go on the other part. And we are going to separate this up because here we have two terms. So we're going to break it up into two sections. And same with this one, we have two terms, so we'll break it up into two sections. If you have three terms for a trinomial, or four terms, or so on and so forth, you can still use the table method. You just would have to break it up into more sections there. So I'm going to start with my a. So that is a positive a, so I can just write the a there. And then my 3, that 3 is a positive 3, so I'm going to write that there. Some people like to put the plus there as well. Then my other binomial, 2a, that's positive, and my 1 is positive also. So again, some people like to put those plus signs in there. I'll go ahead and throw it in real quick. There. And then it's just like a table, like a multiplication table. Multiply together. So when they run into each other, you multiply them together. So here I have a running into 2a, so that is going to become 2a to the second, because again, there's a 1 on this one and a 1 on that one, and we add the ones together. My 2a now runs into a positive 3, so 2 times 3 is 6, and the a comes along for the ride. 1 times anything is that anything, so that's going to give me an a. And then 1 times 3, that's going to give me a 3. These are all positive signs, so I have to remember when I'm putting it together, it's all positive. So putting it together, we have a 2a to the second plus, add your like terms going this direction, so 6a's plus another a, so it's a 1 in front of that, becomes 7a's. And then we have a positive 3 on the end of that. And we get our answer. So you really have to trust your algebra work here. The FOIL method, rewriting it, we have a plus 3 and a 2a plus 1. FOIL stands for multiply the first terms together. So my first terms, I'll use a little arc here. Multiply my first terms together. So a gets multiplied by 2a. So that again becomes 2a squared. You can misspell FOIL also, but make sure you do all the letters. So some people do the inner first versus the outer. So O stands for outer. So I'm going to do that on the bottom here. So we have our outer terms. So that's an a times a positive 1. So that's going to be plus a. Inner, that's 3 times 2a. So that's going to become a positive 6a. And last, so this will kind of cross over here, 3 times 1, and that gives me a positive 3. And clean it up, we get the same answer, 2a squared plus 7a plus 3. Distribution. So this is how the distribution works. We're going to keep it simple. Always take the smaller. So again, these ones are both binomials, but Sometimes we'll run into trinomials, and we'll see that on the back side here. Ooh, something just went really dark. There we go. So we have here the first binomial we're going to separate because the goal is this. So if I rewrite it here, we have a plus 3, that multiplied by 2a plus 1. The goal is to take the a and multiply it and distribute it to both parts, and then take the 3 and distribute it to both parts. So what it actually looks like, ladies and gentlemen, is this. A is being multiplied by 2a plus 1, and that's a positive 3 is being multiplied by the 2a plus 1. So that's what we're doing. Change it into a distributive method here, and then we just distribute. So again, I'll use my things underneath here, and we distribute through. So that's going to become 2a squared, like it has been. A times 1 is a positive a. That's going to become a 6a, and then that's going to become a 3. Again, all multiplication. Clean it up, and we get 2a squared plus 7a plus 3. Done. The next method here is called the vertical or vertically method. It is where you take your terms, and again, if you're going to use this method, something you need to know, the larger polynomial you want to put on top, and then the smaller polynomial on the bottom. And this one doesn't matter because we have the same here. So again, I kind of not use this one as much, but we'll go through it and show you just to see what you like. So I'm going to put actually my 2a plus 1 because it is a little bit bigger than that one, just to reference that. So it is 2a plus 1, and that is going to be multiplied by a plus 3. And what this works as, ladies and gentlemen, it actually changes where you take the parts. So kind of like multiplication old school here, you start with your first number and you multiply it by the first term, and then you multiply it by the second term, except for we don't have terms when we're doing multiplication, kind of like this. So if you had 321 and you're multiplying that by 2, you go 2 times 1, get that answer, then 2 times 2, get that answer, 2 times 3. That's what's happening here. So just to clean it up here, I'll show you again. So my 3 is getting multiplied by that 2a plus 1. So we actually kind of change it back to like a distributive. And we get 6a plus 1. Oops, plus 3. Might help if I multiply the 3 and the 1 together. And then the second line is going to be a times, again, that 2a plus 1, because we're done with that first one. And here we get 2a squared plus a. And as you stagger it, because again you had to move over a place just like you would here. If I had another number up here, we'd have a placeholder. So after we did 2 times 1, and then 2 times 2 is 4, and then 2 times 3 is 6, you'd have a placeholder to move the next set over, and you'd get the 1, 2, and 3, and then you'd add together. We're going to do that. So I've lined this up. So again, this is a placeholder right here. So plus 0. There's nothing else there. So we just add them up. So I get 3. 6a plus a gives me a 7a, which is positive. And then we put the 2a squared in front of it. And we have that. And I see that I wasn't on the screen right there. So again, when you multiply longhand, you go 2 times 1, put it in, 2 times 2, put it in, 2 times 3, put it in. You hold a placeholder, and then you start with your tens position. That same concept works here. We have to have a placeholder, and then you add them up, lined up there. So take a moment to practice those with these here, and we'll flip forward to the back side. So, choose a method. So I'm going to leave that one to you guys as well after you've done your 4 methods here, and you've worked through those, what actually is working best for you. So I'll tell you right now, I did FOIL. I used FOIL on this. Choose a method. Here, you can't use FOIL because we don't have binomials multiplied by binomials. So we can use the distributive property. We can use the table or box method. We can even use the vertically method also. And again, if you use the vertical one, that's the one I kind of don't use. Put this all on top, the larger polynomial on top, smaller one on the bottom. But for me, I like the distributive property for this. So I'm going to take my smaller one and break it apart. So what it looks like is this, ladies and gentlemen. We have 2a, and that's going to be multiplied by every term, a squared plus 3a minus 4. That is a positive 3. And then again, we recopy that first trinomial, a squared plus 3a minus 4. So we use our distributive property, and we distribute it out. Here, we get 2a to the third, because that's a 1 and a 2, and when we multiply them together, we add the exponents. Then we get a positive 6, a to the first. A to the first is a to the second. And then 2 times a minus 4 is a minus 8. And bring the a along with you. Hopefully you're able to see this here. Next, distribute the 3. So we get a positive 3a squared. Then 3 times a 3 is a 9a. And then 3 times minus 4 is minus 12. And then we need to combine our like terms here. So our like terms, we only have one a to the third, so that is a 2a to the third. What I meant by 1a to the third is when I'm looking through this, here's an a to the third term. I don't have any other a to the third terms. I have a to the second, so here's another term, a to the second. So we have a 6 that's positive and a 3 that's positive. So that's going to be a positive 9a to the second. Again, we're combining like terms. A's are next. So I have a minus 8 and a positive 9. So that's going to give me a positive a. If you want to put a 1 in there, that's fine. And last but not least, we have a minus 12 on the end of that. And we are all done. Again, just changed some of my lighting. My lighting changed here as I was doing my notes here, just so you can see that again. So again, we use the distributive property. So let's go ahead and do this one also. This one, I'm going to actually use the box method here. So can we use the box method for it? Yes. Is our box going to be bigger? Yes, it's going to be bigger. So I don't care which polynomial you put on the top or the bottom. I'm going to go across the top larger. So again, we break it up. So we have a 2x squared line. Then we have a minus x line. And then a minus 2. That's on the top. Then on the side, we put our other polynomial, the binomial. So we have 3x. Then I draw my line. And then a minus 1. So we'll start multiplying it together. So 3 times 2 is 6. X squared and x is x to the third. 3x times a negative, so that's going to turn out to be negative 3. And x times x is x squared. And then again, we got another negative here. And 3 times 2 is 6. And we bring the x along for the ride. Ooh, this one's going to be nice because we're just multiplying by minus 1. So we just need to change the signs. So minus 2x squared. Negative and negative is going to be a positive x. And then a negative is going to be a positive 2. And then start cleaning it up. So we only have one term to the third. So x to the third. My x squareds here, So I have a minus, and remember it's always adding when you're going across here, combining like terms. So we're adding two negatives together, so it's a larger negative. So that's going to be a minus 5x squared. Then here's your x's, so I got a negative and a positive. So that is going to be a minus 5x. And then last but not least, we have a positive 2. And there is my final answer. And again, you can use any of the methods other than FOIL, because we don't have just an inner and an outer term here. FOIL only works on the binomials. Last question here. So we have a rectangle, has dimensions x plus 3 and x plus 5. Find the expression of the area of the rectangle. So just a little refresher, what's the area of a rectangle? Area of a rectangle is length times width, or the area of the rectangle is your base times your height. So you will be taking x plus 3 and multiplying that by x plus 5. And again, you'll start to get better at these. I'm going to switch back to my FOIL method. So first gives you x squared, inside or outside, whichever one you want to do first. I tend to do the inside ones first. 3x, outside being multiplied together, 5x, and then the last ones are 15, and clean it up. X squared plus 8x plus 15. There's my area expression. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you have any questions, please ask, and I will flip over to the other side just to make sure that you guys can see that all good again, checking that. And again, check your answers there, but most likely we'll be doing it in class.